Among the many noble virtues humanity has cultivated across generations, there is one that remains untouched by time, unfaded by space, and undiminished by the changing tides of civilization: filial piety. It is a sacred foundation quietly revered by both Eastern and Western cultures alike, despite their differences, as the very root from which all love and morality spring forth. In the teachings of the Buddha, it is said, "Among all virtues, none surpasses filial devotion. Among all wrongs, none is more grievous than unfilial conduct." This is not merely a cultural directive for the East, but a universal call to awakening, a profound reminder to all of humanity that true peace cannot flourish in the absence of gratitude and the sincere spirit of repaying the immeasurable kindness of those who gave us life and nurtured us through the fragile years of our becoming. Wherever filial love is present, there arises the radiant light of genuine compassion, and wherever it is absent, the soil of the human heart turns barren. The threads of relationship slowly unravel into desolation. In the modern Western world, where individuals are encouraged to pursue independence and autonomy from an early age, filial piety may not always appear in its traditional forms as it does in many Asian societies, yet that does not mean it is no longer alive. When viewed through the lens of mindfulness, filial devotion reveals itself as the full presence of the heart, the ability to bridge generational divides, a way of living nourished by deep love and reverent gratitude, not merely through acts of service or ceremonial reverence, but as a spiritual ethic, a gentle and enduring way of being. When a son or daughter pauses amid life's incessant busyness to call their parents, when they return home for even a single day, or when they quietly sit by a hospital bed and hold the aging hand of a fragile mother or father, these moments become the tender embodiment of filial virtue woven seamlessly into everyday life. The Buddha once likened the debt we owe our parents to the vastness of the sky and the boundlessness of the sea, teaching that even if one were to carry their father on one shoulder and their mother on the other, circling the universe for 100 years, it would still not suffice to repay the depths of their loving sacrifice. The profound message behind this teaching is not to burden us with guilt, but to awaken us to a life shaped by gratitude, an inner light capable of transforming the coldness of indifference into the warmth of conscious love. In Western settings where many elderly parents reside in care homes and where personal privacy is honored to such an extent that emotional distance can quietly grow, filial piety may take form through emotional care, through handwritten letters, through the patient listening of a repeated story told for the 10th time, still received with a warm smile, or through the quiet act of forgiving the flaws of those who once raised us. For in truth, no one is perfect, not even those who gave us life. Yet it is precisely within that truth, embraced with humility and love, that the seed of true filial piety is planted and begins to blossom. Parents, too, were once children, growing up amid wounds, limitations, and the shaping forces of their own time. They may not have raised us with perfect wisdom or taught us all things in the best way, but they gave us life, a gift that surpasses all other offerings. For that reason, filial piety is not merely an act of repayment, but a sacred gesture of healing and transformation. Within the Dharma of the Buddha, the truly filial child is one who understands karma and its deep workings. Such a person knows that every unkind thought, word, or deed toward their parents not only brings sorrow to them, but sows seeds of restlessness in their own heart. The filial person does not wait until their parents are in need to offer help, does not wait for words to be spoken to truly listen, does not wait for holidays to show affection, but sees each day as a precious opportunity to connect, to serve, to express love through presence, through understanding, and through a heart rooted in compassion. In today's Western world, where young people often leave home early to pursue their individual paths, filial piety may no longer mean physical proximity, but rather a deep and abiding presence in the heart. A child who lives far from their parents yet honors the values of family, lives with integrity, and walks a virtuous path. That is a silent and profound expression of filial love. When one truly understands this, filial piety is no longer seen as duty, but as a quiet joy, a sacred practice, a homecoming to one's own deeper self. It is through this devotion that a person learns restraint, learns to avoid wrongdoing, not out of fear, but from love, because they know that their own pain inevitably becomes the pain of their parents. And filial love does not end with biological parents. It extends to grandparents, to teachers, to all those who have guided us through the journey of life. On an even broader scale, it becomes the great compassion of the Buddha's teaching, wherein all sentient beings are to be cherished as if they were our parents from countless past lives. This is when filial piety transcends bloodline and transforms into a vast vow, infused into every breath, every thought, every act of the awakened one. That is why the Buddha taught, if one wishes to repay their parents, there is no greater way than to guide them toward goodness, virtue, and the path of awakening. Within the spiritual consciousness of the West, where many seek healing from generational wounds, this teaching is a radiant lamp illuminating the way. For there are those who never truly felt love from their parents, yet instead of clinging to pain, they choose forgiveness, they choose transformation, they choose to live more beautifully as an offering of gratitude. That, too, is a deep and human expression of the Dharma. When filial piety is nourished by wisdom and compassion, it not only heals the bond between parent and child, but becomes a pillar of a more loving and humane society. For a person of filial heart cannot be cruel, A person of filial heart cannot turn away from the suffering of others. A person of filial heart will always strive to live kindly, knowing that every virtuous act they do sends light toward wherever their parents may now dwell, whether still walking this earth or resting beyond it. In this way, filial piety ceases to be merely a virtue. It becomes a way of being, a way of breathing, a silent prayer woven into life itself. Across every culture, from east to west, though the expressions may differ, the value of filial devotion is preserved like a sacred gem. What remains is whether we are awake enough to recognize it, cherish it, and live fully in its light. For when we live with genuine filial love, then every day becomes a day of remembrance, every act becomes a prayer, and every step becomes a return, not only to our parents, but to the peaceful essence of our truest self.
There are truths in this world that defy the scales of logic and transcend the reach of language. Truths that belong to a sacred realm where the human heart communes silently with the divine rhythms of heaven and earth. Among these, none is more wondrous than the love parents hold for their children, a love that flows beyond all conventional measures of emotion, for it is not born of transaction, nor conditioned by expectation, but offered freely, like a pure spring welling from the most ancient spiritual depths of our being. A parent does not merely give life through the body, but through the heart, through countless quiet sacrifices. The broken sleep of long nights beside a cradle, meals quietly divided so the child may have more, worn-out clothes chosen so that warmth may be passed on, silent beads of sweat falling behind their back as they labor under freezing skies, unnamed worries haunting their hearts during the child's illness, unseen tears wept behind closed doors when their child falters in life, and faint smiles forced through fatigue so that their child might never carry the weight of their struggle. All of this and more weaves together a love the Buddha called unconditional, a love unbound by demands or repayment, a manifestation of the purest compassion flowing through daily life, so familiar and close that we often forget it is a form of awakening itself, a love so liberating it transcends the limitations of ego. In the eyes of the Dharma, parents are the first Buddhas we encounter in this life, for none other teaches us first, not through words, but through living example, the sacred lessons of love, patience, and self-sacrifice. Every sigh they release in worry, every small gesture shaped by concern, carries the vast sky of their devotion. And should a child awaken deeply enough to truly see this, the seed of gratitude begins to sprout, growing into the tender branch of filial devotion, blooming as the flower of enlightenment, not in some distant monastery, but within the texture of everyday life. For true practice does not begin with a robe or a temple. It begins with reverence for those who gave us life, who nurtured us with all they had, even if imperfectly, even if their love was clumsy in its expression. For that clumsiness too arose from love, from the hardships they endured, from the wounds they carried on the path of parenthood. To understand this is to step deeply onto the path of transforming suffering through wisdom. In the teachings of the Buddha, filial piety is not merely a moral duty, it is a path of practice, a living Dharma where the child learns the art of mindfulness through caring, through listening, through loving the ones who gave them life with an open heart and a spirit rooted in presence. When people in the West speak of love, they often envision romance, a mutual exchange of affection, a shared emotional journey. But the love of parents is of a different kind. It is a one-way stream, patient and unrelenting, asking for nothing in return, claiming no credit, needing no validation. It simply is, quietly present in every moment their child grows.
And precisely because of this, it possesses a transformative power that transcends all limits of language or culture, unbound by religious framework or tradition, reaching into the deepest chamber of the human spirit, where every being holds a memory of a hand that once caressed their head, a voice that once lulled them to sleep, a gentle embrace that once shielded them from life's chilling winds. Parents do not ask for grand repayment. What they truly wish for is far simpler, that we live well, live kindly, live with responsibility for ourselves and for the world around us. In their eyes, our happiness is the greatest reward for their quiet endurance. And if we can live in this way with the awareness that our life is a precious gift shaped by their endless sacrifice, then every good deed we offer, every smile we share, every tear we shed in compassion becomes a fruit of filial love, spreading the light of loving kindness to all beings. For filial piety is not confined to family. It is the very foundation of all human relationships. One who honors their parents cannot be cruel to others. One who cherishes the life they were given cannot easily ignore the suffering of another. In their heart dwells tenderness, connection, and gratitude, the three sacred elements that shape a person with the spirit of the Buddha in everyday life. That is why the Buddha taught, those who failed to honor their parents, no matter how many lifetimes they dedicate to practice, will find it difficult to attain the path, for without gratitude, all spiritual effort is but a house built on sand. Western expressions of filial love may differ from those of the East. There may be no formal rituals, no ceremonial acts, but what matters is not the outer form, but the inner attitude. If you cherish every moment while your parents are still here, if you don't dismiss a short phone call, an emotional embrace, or a heartfelt conversation without judgment, then you are already walking one of the most profound and silent paths of Buddhist practice, the path of gratitude and devoted care. And one day, when you become a parent yourself, you will understand in your bones all that your own parents quietly endured. In that moment, filial piety will no longer be a duty remembered, but a natural spring flowing from within. And you will no longer feel alone in your spiritual journey, for in your heart, your parents will still be there, alive in every mindful breath, present in every step you take through this life. Among all the sorrows that the human condition may endure, there is one pain that is both silent and piercing, so deep it seems to settle in the very marrow of the soul. And that is the sorrow of a parent whose child has grown indifferent.
It is a pain not born from strangers, but from the very being they once held to their chest with infinite love. It is the ache of a sacred, lifelong devotion met not with gratitude, but with neglect, forgetfulness, and broken promises. It is the quiet heartbreak of watching love unconditionally given through every meal sacrificed, every interrupted night's sleep, every warm coat passed on, every missed opportunity endured so that the child might have a chance to thrive, slowly fade into the background of a life that now has no time to look back. The Buddha once taught that within the three realms of desire, form, and formlessness, there is no suffering greater than the suffering rooted in ignorance. And among the many forms of ignorance, there is one especially cruel: the forgetting of our origin, the neglect of those who gave us life. It is a blindness not imposed from without, but chosen from within, an unconscious turning away from our parents once our hands begin to grasp at titles, wealth, relationships, and new aspirations. In a world where the pace of life is ever accelerating, where Western ideals emphasize individual pursuits, personal growth, and the nuclear family, parents can slowly become a fading presence, an unanswered call, a missed message, a postponed visit that never happens. And when at last the frail mother quietly departs this life, or the stooped father slips away beneath a gray and rainy sky, the child may return, rushing, flower-wreathed in hand, face heavy with sorrow, but by then nothing can be undone. As the poignant saying goes, by the time the child wishes to care for the parents are no longer there. That kind of lateness is not simply a moral error. It is a wound of the soul, a spiritual lesson etched in grief that many carry with them for the rest of their lives, in a sorrow that no gesture can ever fully repair. One unique quality of the Western psyche is the tendency to seek therapy to mend emotional fractures. Yet not all suffering stems from career loss or broken love. Often the void felt in one's chest traces back to something more primal: the guilt of not being there when it mattered, the awareness of having lived too fast, too far, while someone waited quietly at the doorway of an old house, hoping for a child to return. In the eyes of Buddhism, indifference toward our parents is not merely an ethical shortcoming. It is the planting of a seed that will one day bloom into sorrow. For our parents are our first field of merit, the most fertile ground upon which to sow seeds of goodness. To neglect them is to lose the greatest opportunity to cultivate blessings for our own future. Filial piety is not just a tradition.
It is a sacred gate, and to turn away from it is to turn away from the light of our own becoming.
The Buddha once taught, if a child cares for their parents with a heart of compassion, the merit gained is equal to offering to hundreds of thousands of Buddhas. Such a teaching reveals that filial devotion is not a mere private act within the family. It is a noble practice on the spiritual path. It is the very embodiment of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, expressed not in monastic seclusion or distant meditation retreats, but in the midst of daily life. To honor and care for one's parents is to walk the Dharma with every breath, every meal shared, every small act of presence. Conversely, if a child allows their parents to languish in loneliness or emotional neglect, no matter how wealthy or accomplished they may become, they are losing a sacred light within themselves. And eventually, the shadows of emptiness will return, not with warning, but with the quiet and heavy weight of regret. In Western culture, there is often a habit of planning everything: careers, finances, retirement. Yet few make plans to care for their aging parents. Affection becomes something postponed, something I'll do when I have time. But time waits for no one, and parents do not remain forever standing at the doorway, hoping their child will step out from the whirlwind of their busy lives. By the time the children are settled, comfortable, and ready to give back, their parents may no longer be there. The road home becomes long and quiet. The arms that once held them in early sorrow are now only a photograph. The hands that once prepared warm soup during their childhood fevers now live only in memory. And those memories can become a silent fire burning within the conscience, especially if we had once placed our careers, friends, social media, and casual plans above a mother's smile, above a father's sigh. Buddhism does not condemn nor punish. It gently reminds that every cause bears fruit, and the fruit of neglect is regret, spiritual isolation, and a loss of inner anchoring. But, mercifully, the Dharma also teaches, no remorse is ever too late if it comes with awakening. That means, if we turn back in time, if we offer a sincere word of thanks, an apology, even a small act filled with honesty, then the seed of transformation is already planted. Let us not wait until the season of Vulan to think of our parents. Let us not wait until mourning clothes are pressed to our chest to whisper the names of those who gave us life. Love is not something to delay. It must be lived now, in a phone call, a silent embrace, a gaze of presence, a dinner shared in stillness. We need not say much, only be there, fully. Sometimes being present is the greatest gift a parent longs for, not money, not success, but simply to know that they still matter in their child's life amid this ever-changing world.
And if we can do that, then not only will our parents find peace, but we too will feel lightness in our hearts. For in each loving gesture, we are planting the most luminous seeds, not only for this life, but for lifetimes yet to come. Amid the ever-shifting currents of life,
There exist images that pass quietly before our eyes like fragments of an old film, unembellished, unsung, yet possessing the power to stir the soul more deeply than any grand lesson in love or virtue. One such image is that of a mother cradling her small children within the frail walls of a ramshackle home, its rusted tin sheets clattering in the storm winds, its leaking roof unable to keep out the rain, yet somehow holding back an entire sky of love. In that place, the mother does not tremble at the fury of the storm, but shivers only at the thought that her children might be cold. Her frail arms never release even one child, even as the heavens roar above her, and in that moment, one cannot help but see the radiant light of boundless compassion embodied in her form. This compassion is not something learned from sacred texts, but is pure, unconditional love, so pure that even the Buddhas would bow in reverence. That image lingers further into scorching summer days, when a father rises before dawn, bare feet pressing into stones and mud, calloused hands gripping heavy sacks across his shoulders, sweat and dirt mingling and falling with each step. No one knows his name, no one remembers his face, but in his heart lives a single thought: work harder, faster, so that tonight he can bring home a little food for his wife and children. His sacrifice makes no sound, seeks no recognition, yet it forms the very foundation upon which countless humble homes continue to stand. A mother goes hungry so her children may eat the best portions. A father never rests so his children may have enough. And if anyone can witness such scenes and remain unmoved, their soul must surely have grown too cold. In the eyes of Buddhism, that mother in her tattered house is the embodiment of Maha Maitri, great loving kindness that shelters, embraces, and protects.
And that father, burdened yet determined, is the living symbol of Mahakaruna, great compassion that silently endures suffering for the sake of others. If one can perceive truth in these images, then the path of spiritual practice has already begun, not through chanting long sutras or meditating through the night, but through the simple opening of the heart and the realization that the Buddha is already present in these quiet souls, in these parents who never shirk their responsibilities, never curse their fate, but quietly do everything so their children may live, grow, go to school, and dream, even if those dreams never belong to them. In Western culture, which often elevates individual freedom and personal identity, the value of unnamed sacrifices can sometimes be forgotten. Those parents who are never applauded with awards or accolades. But in every civilization, the sacrifice of parents remains the most sacred symbol a human being can touch, for it is devoid of selfish gain, untouched by pretense, flowing purely like a mountain spring from heart to heart. And if, amid the noise and haste of modern life, we pause, just for a moment, we may still hear its gentle music. One day, if we allow ourselves a moment of stillness amidst the ceaseless rhythm of life, we will hear that call, the sacred call of birth and nurturing, the silent yet ever-resonant voice of maternal and paternal love. And from within that call, our hearts may suddenly tremble with a deep and unspeakable stirring, an awakening that urges us to live differently, to live with more gratitude, more responsibility, more kindness, not merely to repay a debt, but to be worthy of the legacy carried within us by those extraordinary beings who from the most humble elements built the foundation of our existence. In a world flooded with glittering lights and eloquent voices, the image of a mother sheltering her children in a sagging hut, or a father bent over in a muddy field might seem like something easily overlooked. But in the radiant light of the Dharma, these become the most profound emblems of boundless compassion, the very soil to which all spiritual cultivation must eventually return. For if we cannot feel the labor-worn breath of a mother or the silent endurance of a father, then any loving kindness we attempt to cultivate may remain but a concept, untethered from the roots of lived experience. And if we have never bowed our heads in reverence before our father's calloused feet or our mother's slender, weary hands, then even the most solemn prostrations before the Buddha may lack a certain sincerity of spirit.
The Blessed One once taught, to truly walk the path, one must first repay the kindness of one's parents, for they are the original gateway through which we first encounter the Dharma, the first place where we learn about compassion, patience, and letting go. When a mother eats leftovers to offer her child a hot bowl of soup, when a father wears mended clothes so his child might have something new for school, when they silently lay down their dreams to nourish a future they cannot foresee, and yet they keep believing and giving, that is the unshakable spirit the scriptures refer to as the bodhicitta, the great vow for the well-being of others. If you have ever witnessed such a moment, your mother offering you her share of food, your father returning home under the snow, his shoulders burdened not only with physical weight, but with love, then hold that image in your heart like a sacred relic. Let it be your compass when life's direction becomes unclear. For within that image dwells the Buddha, dwells the path, dwells the origin of all compassion and wisdom. Not as something written, but as something lived, something only the heart can truly understand. There exist ancient verses, seemingly simple and rustic, yet within them lie an entire universe of love and virtue, a timeless whisper that transcends culture and era, compelling even the most modern or Western soul to pause and bow inwardly in silent reverence. A father's labor is as great as Mount Tai, a mother's love as boundless as water flowing from its source. This saying is not merely poetic, it is a living, breathing portrait of the sacred grace and nurturing love that parents offer their children, a love unshaken by time, unconditioned, and asking for nothing in return but silently enduring through every season of life. If one has ever stood amidst the solemn majesty of ancient mountains,
and felt their unmoving strength, they would understand why a father's love is likened to Mount Tai, enduring, silent, and steady. A father's love is not often wrapped in tender words or soft embraces like a mother's. It is the quiet foundation beneath each step we take, the stern gaze laced with unspoken worry, the broad back that bears the family through storms without complaint. It is the man who sacrifices comfort, yields dreams, and recedes into the background so his child can step forward. And the most noble truth is this: even when disappointed or hurt, a father continues to forgive, to wait, to open his arms whenever the child returns, just like the mountain that remains, unmoved, ever present, never reproaching. And a mother's love, why is it compared to water flowing from its source? Because such a stream never dries, never ceases. It weaves through the fabric of life quietly and unceasingly. From the womb, a mother nourishes her child with her very body. From the first breath, she offers milk sweet not only in nourishment, but in soul, infused with patience, gentleness, forgiveness, and an unshakable belief in her child's goodness. Whether the child stumbles or strays, she continues to love, to hope, and to wait. Her love is a current that may trickle gently or surge with force, but never once does it stop flowing. For her love is not based on merit, not on reason. It flows without seeking source or destination, for its sole purpose is the well-being of the child, the serenity of the life she once carried within. In Western cultures, where independence is encouraged early on, the symbolism of the steadfast father as mountain and the tender mother as water may not be as poetically enshrined. Yet the essence remains untouched. It lives in the father who teaches resilience without rebuke, in the mother who sits through sleepless nights beside a fevered child, in hurried notes slipped into lunchboxes, in dinners kept warm late into the night, in the quiet gaze that follows a child's departing figure from schoolyard to train station to distant dreams.
Parental love in all corners of the earth manifests differently, but its essence never changes. And if we live slowly enough, deeply enough, we begin to realize, within each triumph we taste is the strength of a father's hand. Within every moment of peace are the tears of a mother. Within every wise choice is an old teaching repeated through years. And at every turn where we find the courage to return, there is always someone waiting. The Buddha once taught that to walk the noble path, one must first repay the 4 great debts, and among them, the debt to one's parents is the most intimate, the most sacred, for they are the earthly Buddhas who gave us both body and the first glimpse of compassion. First and foremost, one must honor and serve their parents, for this is the root of all virtuous action, the very foundation of awakening. For one who cannot revere their mother and father cannot truly love humanity, cannot truly feel the suffering of others, and cannot genuinely practice compassion. True compassion is not reserved only for grand gestures or distant causes. It begins in the quiet humility of bowing to the unseen sacrifices, in being grateful for each grain of rice, each worn piece of clothing, each imperfect but heartfelt teaching passed down with love. To live in such a way that a father's effort, as vast as a mountain, and a mother's love, as infinite as flowing water, are not forgotten amid the rush of modern life, that is the essence of the Dharma in daily living. And if someone reading these words feels a soft ache in their heart because it has been too long since they last returned home, too long since they last whispered a word of thanks, know this: it is never too late to begin again. For parents are always the ones most ready to forgive, most willing to wait, and every small act, a phone call, a handwritten note, a glance filled with tenderness, can blossom the sacred merit of their devotion within your soul. From there, you may walk through this world never alone, for in your heart you carry a mountain and a river, the timeless symbols of a love that never runs dry.
Filial piety is not merely a relic of tradition or a moral value from ancient times that modern people may choose to remember or forget. It is the foundational root, the steady origin upon which all genuine ethics are built. It is the first stone laid in the house of character, compassion, and kindness amid a world ever in flux. In the Buddha's teaching, filial devotion is not just a virtue reserved for children in relation to their parents, but the essential practice, the initial step on the path of liberation from suffering. For one who has not yet understood the meaning of filial piety, cannot yet fully comprehend compassion. If we have never known how to be grateful to those who gave us life, how can we claim to be grateful to humanity, to sentient beings, or to the three jewels? All things great begin with the small. All that is noble must grow from a firm foundation, and filial piety is precisely that sacred ground where all other virtues take root and rise. In the West, where culture often emphasizes personal freedom and self-determination, the concept of filial devotion may not be spoken aloud in moral commandments as in Eastern traditions. Yet if one looks closely, one will see the core values of gratitude, attentive listening, forgiveness, and familial affection all arise from the same spirit of filial reverence. It may be expressed through different words, different customs, but its essence remains unchanged. Wherever one lives in the world, if one can offer respect to their parents, if one can extend care to those who sacrificed for them, then in their heart will naturally bloom humility, gentleness, and kindness, the three foundational qualities of true morality. The Buddha once taught, "One who is not filial, even if they cultivate for countless lifetimes, will find it hard to reach the fruit of the path." Why is that so? Because a person without filial piety has not yet learned to place others above themselves, has not bowed before the grace of sacrifice, has not yet relinquished ego to live for others. And these very things form the heart of ethics, the essence of every spiritual journey. Filial devotion helps tame the arrogance of self, softens selfishness, and awakens the understanding that we are not the center of the universe,
but a continuation of a vast current of love. A current that begins with our parents, flows through each generation, through every word of teaching, every embrace, every drop of sweat. And when we can cherish this current, bow to it, and carry it forward, then we are truly grown, not only in body, but in virtue and in the spirit. In Western society, many have grappled with an inner void, despite living in material abundance. And one of the profound causes of that emptiness lies in the severed connection to one's sacred roots. The forgetting that we are not born from randomness, but from a long lineage of sacrifice, of love, and of unfulfilled dreams carried by our parents, grandparents, and ancestors.
When that sacred thread is restored through the practice of filial devotion, be it through a simple thank you, a small act of care, a handwritten letter, or simply listening to the elderly with an open heart, an inner healing begins to unfold. For gratitude holds the power to soothe invisible wounds and to guide the soul back to its truest self, where there is no separation, no judgment, only understanding and love. Filial piety is not a rigid set of obligations, nor a burdensome moral code to carry. It is a lantern that lights the soul's path through the shadows of this age, an age where people are easily swept up in the whirlwind of success, individualism, and self-promotion, forgetting the very roots that brought them into this world. And when the outer brilliance fades, when admiration vanishes and the world turns its back, it is filial piety, if still alive, that becomes the unshakable anchor of the spirit, the refuge we can return to, even if only within the sanctuary of the mind. That is why the great spiritual masters have always begun their teachings by emphasizing filial devotion, because they knew that without this foundation, the higher truths of compassion, wisdom, and selflessness remain lofty ideals, rootless and unable to blossom in the soil of daily life. Filial piety does not require grand speeches or elaborate rituals. It asks only to be expressed through a sincere heart, a genuine embrace, a timely question of care, a meal prepared with reverence, a moment of silent listening to one's parents without rushing to judge. Though seemingly small, these gestures possess transformative power, for in practicing filial love, we are also cultivating virtue, purifying the mind, dissolving karmic burdens, and stepping onto the path of true spiritual practice. Therefore, no matter who you are, where you live, or what culture you belong to uphold and embody filial piety is more than a duty. It is a noble choice. The choice to be kind, to live meaningfully, and to nurture within oneself a soul that is beautiful, steadfast, and radiant, like a flame that has never gone out in the long night of the human journey.
Throughout the long journey of humanity's spiritual awakening, if there is one sacred value that has consistently served as a bridge between the Dharma and daily life, between the spiritual path and worldly existence, it is filial piety, a vow of the heart that not only beautifies the human world, but also opens the door to one of the most profound, practical, and accessible paths of cultivation in Buddhist teaching. The Buddha did not solely teach the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, or the law of karma as lofty metaphysical principles. He also rooted the spiritual path in the simplest, most tangible acts, in being filial, in cultivating gratitude towards one's parents, in tending to and caring for them with reverence, affection, and mindfulness. For this reason, from its earliest days, Buddhism has been called the path of filial piety, not because its practice is confined to the family sphere, but because filial devotion is the firm ground upon which all other virtues can flourish, the deep root that nourishes the great tree of moral life in a world swept by impermanence and dust. The saying, "To care for one's parents skillfully is to venerate the Buddha," is not a mere metaphor, but a sacred truth. For within the image of a father or mother dwells the essence of compassion, patience, unconditional love, and boundless forbearance, the very qualities that define a Buddha. If a child can bow to their parents with sincere reverence, they are performing a most genuine form of daily worship. If they can listen deeply to their parents' simple yet heartfelt words, they are receiving a living sutra, one that does not require chanting with the lips, but understanding with the heart. In Buddhism, filial piety is not a rigid moral code or a burdensome duty, but a spiritual practice, a sacred method guiding one back to the Buddha nature already present within every being. For no one can truly understand compassion without first kneeling to wash a mother's aged feet, without rising early to prepare a bowl of porridge for a frail father, without giving up an appointment to sit beside a parent in illness. In such moments, the Buddha's heart reveals itself, and the path becomes alive and luminous, no longer bound by theory or ritual. Many in the West who approach Buddhism are drawn to meditation, mindfulness, or profound concepts like impermanence and selflessness. Yet few recognize that the act of returning to care for one's parents is among the most secure and potent gateways into the Dharma. For it is within that space that consciousness is quietly trained through patience, endurance, gratitude, and selfless service, qualities no book can teach without the lived experience of a devoted heart. More than a mere virtue, filial piety is a luminous force within the soul, one with the power to dissolve apathy, a psychological affliction increasingly prevalent in modern Western societies, where individual pressures drive people apart, where parents and children live in separate emotional worlds, gradually forgetting that connection cannot be maintained by material means alone, but must be nourished by a heart imbued with gratitude. It is precisely within such a landscape that the practice of filial devotion emerges not just as a noble sentiment, but as a genuine path of spiritual cultivation.
When you take time to visit your parents, not out of obligation, but from heartfelt love, you are practicing mindfulness. When you speak to them with patience and deep listening, you are embodying right speech. When you respond without irritation to the repetitive habits of aging parents, you are cultivating the perfection of forbearance.
And when your heart softens at the sight of their smile, their tears, or their weary gaze, you have already taken a profound step on the path of awakening. The Buddha, after attaining enlightenment, returned to offer spiritual liberation to his mother in the celestial realm and to his father on earth, demonstrating that even for one who has attained supreme awakening, the act of repaying parental kindness remains inseparable from the spiritual path. He did not relegate filial piety to the realm of worldly affairs. Instead, he uplifted it as the highest expression of wisdom and compassion. For to truly repay our parents, we must live in a way that brings them peace, joy, and lightness of heart, and this demands a continual refinement of thought, word, and deed. Buddhism does not ask you to retreat to a distant mountain in search of serenity. It invites you to return home, to gaze into your parents' eyes, to hold their hands, and to live each moment with unconditional love. That, right there, is the sacred temple, the Pure Land, the perfect meditation hall that one can find amid the dust and chaos of this world. Therefore, for all who walk the spiritual path, if the wish is to truly transform the heart, begin by nurturing filial piety. Care for your parents while they are alive. Pray for them when they have passed. Dedicate your merits to them through every good deed, and above all, live in such a way that they can smile with ease from the heart and trust in your moral character and inner life. For when a parent smiles with ease from the heart, it is as if you are planting the seed of liberation in your own karmic stream. Filial piety is not a separate commandment in Buddhism. It is the soul of all precepts, the sacred foundation upon which one purifies karma, cultivates compassion, refines wisdom, and walks firmly through life without losing direction, because one remembers clearly where one has come from and how one must live to be worthy of the greatest gift our parents have given us, life itself, and the rare, precious chance to be human.
Among all the myriad relationships that bind human beings together, none is as profound, sacred, and enduring as the bond between parent and child. A thread, invisible yet unbreakable, a stream of love that never runs dry. Precisely because of its boundless nature, any effort to repay the grace of father and mother, even if extended throughout an entire lifetime, can never be deemed complete or sufficient. In the Buddhist scriptures, the Blessed One once taught that if a child were to carry their father on one shoulder and their mother on the other, traversing the entire range of Mount Sumeru for 100 years, and were to offer every treasure they possess to care for them, even then it would still fall short of repaying the immeasurable debt of love and sacrifice that parents have bestowed upon their child.
This teaching is not an exaggeration, but a deep awakening, a reminder that such love cannot be measured, weighed, or exchanged for any material equivalent in this world. It is the one form of love that dares to give all without keeping anything, dares to endure all pain without complaint, and dares to step back for an entire lifetime so the child might step forward with confidence and strength. In every culture, whether rooted in Eastern tradition or grounded in Western modernity, when the subject of parents arises, people instinctively speak in sacred tones. Though the expressions may differ, the essence remains a shared current of love, forgiveness, and infinite sacrifice, a form of affection that eludes scientific explanation and defies psychological quantification, for it dwells beyond the domain of reason. It resides in the heart, the soul, the profound nature of compassion itself, boundless, unconditional, and impartial, just as the Buddha once described. If we live with mindful awareness of this truth, then each breath we take, each step we tread, and each success we achieve becomes a blossom sprouting from the sacred soil called parental love. Without nurturing and remembering this sacred ground, all the glittering achievements of the outer world remain but fleeting illusions. Truly, many rush headlong into careers, fame, and social circles, forgetting that behind them are still the watchful eyes of those who silently follow their every step, still a pair of aged hands clasped in nightly prayer, still an unspoken lifetime of worry carried by parents simply to exchange for the peace of their children. This love does not wane with the child's maturity, does not diminish when they have their own families and responsibilities. It merely transforms into another form, quiet, invisible, but steadfast, like a shadow never parting from the form, like the warmth of the morning sun never abandoning the earth. What is most heartbreaking in today's modern society, especially in Western countries where independence is highly prized and generations often live apart, is that the connection between parents and children can silently fade into the background, not from a lack of love, but from the sheer weight of busyness, the deeply ingrained culture of individualism, and the ever-widening distance, both physical and emotional.
Then, one day, the child wakes in shock to find there is no longer a chance to say thank you, no more time to hold their mother close, no final moment to grasp their father's hand. And in that moment, a wave of regret rushes in, irreversible and searing, because the opportunity to express gratitude has slipped beyond reach, and all the success, Fame and accolades in the world suddenly turn pale and hollow. The one who gave a lifetime waiting in quiet sacrifice is now gone without fanfare. That is why the Buddha taught, to care for one's parents is the greatest blessing of human life. For when we live with filial devotion, we are not merely fulfilling a duty, we are sowing seeds of merit, transforming ourselves from within, and opening the heart to true compassion, not learned from scripture or philosophy, but awakened through tangible acts toward those who gave us life. In Buddhist practice, a sincere disciple is not one who merely recites chants, bows devoutly, or sits in deep meditation, but one who also lives as a child of virtue and gratitude. For filial piety is the first threshold into the Dharma, the foundation upon which morality, concentration, and wisdom are built. From this soil, the Bodhi mind blossoms, compassion begins to flow, and awakening no longer feels distant or unreachable. Filial piety is not merely a moral code for children. It is the measure of a spiritual practitioner's depth, the mark of true maturity in both heart and mind. For one who knows filial piety knows gratitude, and one who is grateful cannot be numb to the pain of others, cannot ignore injustice, and cannot live only for themselves, because they have been touched by the sacred gift of sacrifice and the boundless love that parents bestow. And once this is truly understood, we no longer ask, "How can I ever repay them fully?" Because the answer is, we cannot. Yet that is not the point. What matters is not perfect repayment, but genuine intention in every act. The living spirit of gratitude in our everyday choices, the way we carry ourselves so that our parents may rest easy in their hearts, the strength of our character in the face of life's temptations, and the silent vow we keep not to bring sorrow or shame to those who gave us everything. To live well, not just for ourselves, but for the two souls who placed their whole lives in us, that is the essence of true piety. And when filial devotion becomes part of our breath, our thoughts, our daily actions, then even if we cannot carry our parents across every mountain, even if we cannot repay every invisible debt, we have already done enough. Enough for our parents to feel peace, enough for us to live free of lifelong regret, and enough to pass on to future generations like a sacred lamp handed from heart to heart, a light that never fades, a love that never dies, a sun that never sets in the heart of one who remembers their way home.
In a world spinning relentlessly on the axis of materialism, where success is so often measured by tall buildings, sleek cars, high incomes, and social status, the Buddha's gentle reminder about filial piety is like a refreshing breeze, whispering into hearts parched by forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of the most essential truth, that filial devotion cannot be weighed by the amount of money we send each month, nor can it be calculated by the price tags of lavish gifts, but rests in sincere presence, in a heart that listens deeply, in eyes that radiate love, and in the ability to make our parents feel they are still important, still cherished, still needed. For when parents enter the twilight of their lives, what they need most is not money, but tenderness. In the luminous vision of the Dharma, filial piety is not merely external duty, but an inner path of cultivation. It is the spiritual training of a child to become gentle, patient, kind, and compassionate in how they treat their mother and father. A person with a heart rooted in filial love will find their every action guided by virtue. Conversely, if one possesses material wealth but lacks sincerity of heart, then such piety is no more than hollow ritual. All around the world, whether in a modest apartment on the outskirts of an American suburb, a high-rise building in Europe, or a countryside home in Vietnam, one can find the quiet image of an aging parent sitting by the window, waiting for a call from their child, a simple message, or a warm family meal filled with laughter. These scenes are the most poignant proof of a timeless truth. No gift, no sum of money can replace the feeling of being loved and genuinely cared for. In Western culture, traditions such as Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthdays often serve as moments for families to gather. And how precious these occasions are, for they are, in essence, modern expressions of filial piety. A heartfelt hug, a sincere blessing, a humble meal shared in joy. These are sacred vehicles of love, mending distances and helping parents feel they have not been left behind, not been forgotten amidst the growing noise and numbness of our hurried world. The Buddha once taught, to care for one's parents with a heart of loving kindness is a great and noble virtue. For when you sit down to eat with your mother and father with full presence, without burying your face in your phone, without making them feel like a burden, you are offering them the most sacred gift of all, your wholehearted presence. Many believe that sending enough money home fulfills the duty of filial piety, but they forget that digits in a bank account can never replace the warmth of a held hand, the comfort of a heartfelt embrace, or the intimacy of a deep conversation about old memories. Those simple treasures parents often long for, but never dare to ask, because they have grown too used to silent sacrifice, too familiar with placing their children's needs above their own.
That is why, in true Buddhist practice, filial piety does not end with financial support. It begins with seeing into their eyes and understanding what they truly need. Not just medicine or clothes, but compassionate listening, a sliver of time carved from our busy lives to share a meal, to ask, "How are you today, Dad?" or to tell Mom a few light-hearted stories. Acts that reassure them, even as old age creeps in, that they remain vital, cherished, and deeply woven into the fabric of our lives.
That feeling of being needed is the most nourishing medicine for an aging soul. A remedy no pharmacy can offer, no doctor can prescribe, for it is born solely from the heart of a child who understands true devotion. In the Dharma, filial piety is not merely a virtue, it is wisdom. Only those with insight know that material repayment is finite, but nourishment through presence is infinite. A timely word can dissolve months of silent sorrow. A sincere hug can calm years of quiet loneliness. And a peaceful moment spent in silence beside one's father can become the most treasured memory of his final days. More than that, heartfelt filial love becomes a mirror for the next generation to reflect upon. Our children do not learn from what we say, but from how we treat their grandparents. If we live with full presence and visible gratitude, we sow seeds of virtue in their consciousness, so that one day, as we grow old, someone will sit beside us, hold our hands, and love us with the same tenderness we once gave to our own parents. So if you live far from your parents, if you are buried in the weight of responsibilities, do not wait for a holiday to reach out. Do not wait for Vulan to call. Live each day as a chance to honor your roots, not with extravagance, but with sincerity. For in a parent's eyes, no gift is more precious than a child who truly thinks of them. No meal more delicious than one shared in warmth and laughter. No care more sacred than being truly heard. And if you can do that, even in silence, your parents will feel it. Just as the sun still radiates warmth without a sound, just as the rivers quietly nourish the fields. And in that sacred space, the Buddha smiles.
Filial piety does not merely reside in words of reverence, nor is it limited to the physical acts of caring for and supporting one's parents in their old age. It is more profoundly a path of inner cultivation and a maturation of the soul, a sacred transformation from a child who passively receives love to a person who actively returns beauty and meaning to life. In the Buddha's teachings, a truly filial child is not simply one who offers material support or checks in daily, but one who commits to becoming a virtuous, responsible being, one who chooses right over convenience, speaks words that uplift, and harbor kind and wholesome thoughts. For the life of a child is the living testament to the parent's success in nurturing and guiding a human being. This is especially resonant in Western societies, where children are taught independence from an early age. There, the deepest joy of parents is not found in repayment or dependence, but in witnessing their child grow into someone who stands with dignity and compassion, who lives with purpose,
and whose character radiates the values they once whispered through lullabies and silent sacrifices. Such a life is the most enduring and profound expression of filial piety, because nothing brings more peace to a parent's heart than knowing their child not only survives, but thrives, and does so with grace and integrity that honors every unspoken act of love. This kind of maturity is not born of age or accomplishments, but of a deep inner gaze, a willingness to reflect, to admit one's wrongs, to refine the self continuously. For only when a child learns to live kindly with themselves can they truly extend that kindness to their parents and to the world. The Buddha taught that one who lives mindfully will never cause their parents sorrow, for mindfulness is always accompanied by humility, gratitude, and a quiet sense of responsibility. And these qualities form the foundation of a silent yet deeply rooted filial path. And it is through these quiet deeds, living with purpose, refraining from actions that disturb the peace of society, guarding one's name from dishonor, conducting oneself with respect, standing by the truth, choosing compassion over ease, that the true growth of the heart is revealed. These are the silent offerings that bring the deepest joy to every mother and father, across all cultures, across all time. A joy not in what the child gives, but in who the child has become. Many still mistakenly believe that filial piety means providing financial support or being physically present every day. Yet what brings the truest and enduring happiness to a parent is the quiet assurance that their child has not lost their way, that they are capable of standing on their own, of facing life's storms with inner strength, of choosing to live with kindness and integrity, even without anyone to lean on. In that very maturity, the child is offering a gift far greater than material wealth, the gift of peace of mind. This is especially poignant in the West, where many parents spend their later years alone in nursing homes or small apartments. For them, it is not the money that warms the heart, but the knowledge that their child has become a person of strong character. And even more precious is when that child does not forget their roots, does not let pride sever the bonds of family, and does not allow distance or busyness to dim the light of love. That truly is filial piety. That is the Dharma. That is a subtle radiance that shines from within, needing no display.
Through this inner cultivation, the child learns the most profound lesson of human life, that parents do not demand perfection. They long simply for their child to live with integrity, to love sincerely, to strive each day to be a little better. And if we can live in such a way, then every step we take becomes an act of gratitude, Every kind word we speak is an incense offering to our ancestors, and every compassionate deed becomes a gentle bell reminding us never to forget where we came from. The Buddha himself returned to visit his royal father after attaining enlightenment, and rather than using supernatural powers, he chose to transform through the power of virtue. In that act lies a sacred teaching. There is no nobler form of filial devotion than living rightly and bringing benefit to the world through our being. For our parents will not walk beside us forever, but if we live well, then even when they are gone, they will continue to smile from somewhere, in a sunlit afternoon, in the whisper of the forest breeze, or in the quiet joy of every wholesome seed we plant in this world. Filial piety does not begin with grand gestures or ceremonial expressions. It arises quietly from the simplest, most unassuming moments of everyday life. A caring glance, a timely question of concern, a warm meal prepared with love, or simply the full presence of a child beside their parents, unshaken by the pull of phones or the endless weight of work. In the teachings of the Buddha, every great path begins with a single step, and though filial devotion is among the deepest of virtues, it too starts with the ordinary, because true filial piety is not found in words, nor in the celebrations of Ulambana, but is most clearly revealed through small acts carried out with mindfulness and sincerity. In the West, where independence is a prized value, people sometimes forget that sitting down for a meal with parents, listening patiently to stories they've already told, helping with errands, or taking them to the doctor are not just chores, they are profound expressions of love in action. No philosophy is needed, no lofty praise is necessary, only presence. And wherever presence is offered with love, the Dharma is alive and flowing. The Buddha once emphasized, those who care for their parents are sowing the greatest blessings in life. This truth requires neither wealth nor power, only a heart that remembers and the willingness to let that gratitude take form, not making parents wait for a meal, gently explaining a new gadget, being patient when memory fades, offering a walk in the park at dusk. These may seem trivial, but within their simplicity lies the depth of sacred principle. In the West, love is often viewed as an emotion, but Buddhism teaches that love is action, not just feeling grateful, but living gratefully. Not merely thinking of parents, but showing them that love in tangible daily ways. When a child remembers to speak gently, refrains from disturbing a parent's rest, gives up the better portion of a meal, takes initiative in cleaning the house, or recalls a birthday without being told, these are not just good manners, they are manifestations of a filial heart. They are authentic practices of the way amid the messiness of life.
Here, compassion is no longer an abstract ideal. It has become a lived expression, a quiet, unwavering presence that transforms everyday acts into sacred offerings. Filial piety, then, is not something distant or abstract. It is near, so near that if we live slowly enough, attentively enough, we can practice it every single day, without waiting for a special occasion or making a pilgrimage to a faraway temple. For our very own home, where our parents dwell, is already a sacred space, a true Dharma hall, a holy ground where the Buddha manifests in the humble forms of those who gave us life. And if we fail to see this, fail to cherish this, then no matter how far we travel in search of the Buddha, it is but a chasing of shadows. For the Buddha within us only awakens when we learn to bow before love, when we learn to care for the small without neglect, when we learn to offer just a few minutes of our day to our parents with complete and undistracted presence. When we can do this, we are not only fulfilling our role as a grateful child, but we are walking the true path of practice, living in mindfulness, and transforming ourselves from ignorance into wisdom through what may appear to be small acts, yet carry immense spiritual weight. Among the many profound teachings of the Buddha, there is one simple phrase that pierces deeply into the hearts of those willing to awaken. There is no such thing as early in repaying one's parents, only late. For time does not wait, and our parents will not live forever, holding out until we grow successful, mature, and finally turn back to honor them. Filial devotion, if delayed, if postponed, for when we have enough time, enough resources, the right conditions, often ends up expressed only through belated incense, through tears shed at funerals, or through unheard prayers whispered into silence. In the compassionate, awakened vision of the Dharma, filial piety is not a grand affair for some distant tomorrow. It is a way of being that must begin today, in this very moment, while our parents still breathe, still wait silently for a phone call, a kind word, a simple meal shared with their child, and above all, the wholehearted presence of the one they have loved and sacrificed for unconditionally all their lives.
No one waits for us to become wealthy or free of obligations in order to be loved, and parents are no different. They do not long for lavish gifts or eloquent speeches. They simply long to feel remembered, to see that their child still holds them as sacred and irreplaceable. In Western culture, where independence is often prized and generations tend to live apart, the Buddha's words shine even more brightly as a gentle but urgent reminder. To live in a modern world does not mean to live coldly. To be free does not mean to be indifferent. And if we do not nourish filial love through action while we still can, the day will come when all that remains will be sorrow and regret. For though science may find ways to prolong life,
No one can turn back time. No one can return to yesterday to embrace their father once more, to hold their mother's hand a little longer, or to say those simple words, "Thank you," that seem so small, yet become eternally unreachable when the chance is gone. The Buddha taught that among the 4 great debts to repay, the debt to our parents stands first, for they are the ones who gave us this precious human life, the very foundation for every opportunity to cultivate and transform ourselves. And yet too many people, in their pursuit of enlightenment and inner peace, forget the most essential truth. Peace begins with bringing peace to our parents' hearts. Awakening begins with returning to embrace them in full presence and love. A filial child does not wait until they have money to send, does not wait until illness strikes to return home, does not wait until the final moments to shed tears. They live each day as a sacred opportunity to love, to serve, and to express gratitude through self-cultivation, through thoughtful care, and through kind choices that allow their parents to rest easy and smile with contentment. And if you are reading these words while your parents are still alive, whether near or far, whether strong or already frail, know this: you are holding in your hands a profound blessing, a rare and precious chance not given to all. This chance should not be squandered by the excuses of busyness or the promises of "tomorrow I'll come home." Begin today with one small but sincere act, a phone call, a message of affection, an apology if you've ever caused them pain, a pause in your whirlwind of daily life just to remember, out there may lie the world, but within you there is always a place to return to, and that place is your parents. That place is the origin of your humanity, the foundation of all spiritual practice, the cradle that steadies your soul so it may not drift aimlessly through the currents of life.